All right. Hello, everybody. We're live, and I am so excited to be joined here today by Mimosa Kabir. My name is Emma Lewzey at 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗏 Philanthropy. We haven't met yet, and we are talking about a super hot topic today, and that is the imposter phenomenon. And we're going to be specifically talking about it in the context of fundraising and major gifts. So welcome, Mimosa. I'm so glad you could join us today. Can you kick us off and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me today. My name's Mimosa. I've been working as a fundraiser for the last 10 years at a lot of different Toronto institutions, as well as international and national charities. I've sort of run the gamut on different types of fundraising, from events and sponsorship to individual giving. And currently I work at 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏 as a capital campaign manager.
Amazing. That's wonderful. So if folks are just joining us now for this live, I'm joined by Mimosa Kabir. We're going to be talking all about the imposter phenomenon and how it relates to our major gift fundraising. We're also going to be talking about some steps you can take to overcome it as well. So I hope this is going to be of great value to everyone watching today. If you're just joining us, go ahead and say hello. We'd love to hear from you. You can drop any of your questions below. And if you're catching up on the replay, I'd love you to use the hashtag replay. So let's get started. I have a few questions for you, Mimosa. And my first one is, I always like just to start with a common understanding of a topic that we're talking about. So when we're talking about the idea of imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome, like what exactly do we mean? How do you define that?
I mean, I think at the root of it, it's being unable to internalize your successes. So, you know, if you ever find yourself chalking up your accomplishments to luck, and for me, like, it extends beyond being grateful and considering yourself lucky. It's not recognizing that you've taken steps to achieve what you have achieved and thinking, you know, it's luck, it's the efforts of everybody. It's sometimes worrying that you're a fraud and you're going to get found out. And I think at the root of it, it's not believing you're as competent as people think you are. So that's why you always have this fear that I just got here by luck. What if they find out that I don't actually belong here? So I would say it's also not having that sense of belonging. And quite often with imposter syndrome, it's actually you know, part of your confidence comes from being around others who look and sound like you. So the less you see that modeled in a place, the more you're likely to feel like an imposter.
That's so interesting. You raise a really good point. I hope we can explore through our conversation. And that is actually one of the reasons I shared when I shared that we were going live to talk about this topic. In my email, I actually shared a tweet that I found really thought-provoking, and it was talking about how the idea of the imposter syndrome actually sounds more like it's an internal issue as opposed to something that is actually influenced very much externally, right? So I started adopting using that idea of the imposter phenomenon because I think that does acknowledge the fact that there are factors that are very much influenced externally that impact us, you know, including, you know, getting deep fast, but including racism, sexism, homophobia, and ableism. I just want to acknowledge that right up front, is that oftentimes these things very much influence us when we're feeling like, you know, we're feeling that sense of the imposter phenomenon. So I'm really glad that you raised that up front. And hello to Misha, thank you for joining us. If you are just joining us, we're talking about the imposter phenomenon and major gifts. And we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or you want to weigh in terms of your experience, we'd love to hear from you below. So great. So I was interested because I've seen a lot of examples of the way this can actually show up. What your experience, whether it's from your own personal experience or working with others, like how does this actually like practically show up in our lives and our work?
I think it shows up in many ways. I mean, many of us have been working from home for a while, but in previous years, I would say one of the main places that I would feel like an imposter is at any event. And that's, networking events with other fundraisers, donor events, board meetings. When you look around and everyone seems so accomplished, it's easy to start doubting yourself and what value you add to the conversation. There's been times where I've seen other fundraisers at events who seem to work the room, and I feel so lost and, almost incapable of doing what they're doing. And I think that is probably one of the biggest ways in the day-to-day, especially in fundraising. You probably attend a lot of events, and especially with high net worth donors. Sometimes, you don't feel like they're peers, so it's uncomfortable trying to figure out where you would have that common ground to start a conversation. And it seems to be a very important part of what we do.
Yeah. I see it show up, like I hear some really common phrases when I'm working with students around major gifts. One of the most common ones that comes up is, I don't actually feel important enough to be doing this work. I don't feel important enough, which links back, I think, to what you were saying, is that idea of not feeling like a peer. I don't feel important enough to pick up the phone and give this major donor a call. So that's really interesting. I want to talk about a few more examples, but I love to kind of link this back to practical ways people can address these things when they come up. And I wanted to share, one of the things I find that's most important for me, because we do continue throughout our careers, I believe, to experience this. No matter how long you've been doing this, it will continue coming up. And I want to make sure I tuck that away to come back to, because I think that's a really important thing too, to say, like, it doesn't go away. You just need to learn how to manage it. But one of the most important steps I found in working with imposter syndrome is it sounds so simple, as just being able to like recognize it when it comes up, right? To be able to say, like, aha, I see you. I see you, imposter phenomenon. And this is where this is coming from. So, how do you have any sort of concrete ways when to go back to your example of networking, like, how do you manage that when that kind of sense of being an imposter may arise in a situation like that?
In events, I usually take the fake it till you make it approach, which I don't always suggest, because I think it can make you feel more like an imposter, and it's almost not owning it. But when it's a timed event and you know that you only have a half hour, it's sort of finding the courage in that moment to start the conversations, and you can reflect upon it later. So that sometimes for me, it's just a powering through and being like, okay, I don't have time to sit here and think about all these things. It's really just a moment to interact with someone. And quite often, once you start the first conversation, you remember that they're people and they're humans, and you start to interact, and it takes away the anxiety around it in the first place.
I love that advice. And I just wanted to pull that line out and highlight it, is that idea of remembering that your donors are human too. It's like, that's been a huge one for me. I think we sometimes, even with colleagues as well, we think, we look at someone else and think like, well, they've got it all together. They're not experiencing imposter syndrome. But like, I can pretty much guarantee you that, people are dealing with their own internal struggles, right? Whatever those look like. So that can really help, is just understanding and remembering that our major donors are human too. I found that was a super practical, just a super practical reminder to myself in a situation like that. I think if you're a major gift fundraiser, like, you're pretty familiar with the kind of event you're talking about. Maybe it's a special event at your, hospital, for example, for your major donors, and just, Yeah, just remembering that your donors you're talking to are human too is so valuable. One of the other things I would often find valuable, I don't know if you identify as an introvert, Mimosa, is that a fair? So I do too. I also identify as an introvert. And one of the things that really helped me, I think, embrace the strengths that I brought to Major Gift Fundraising as an introvert is just to start thinking about, it's like, really being active and thinking about, like, how does being an introvert actually make me excel at this job? Because it does. I believe, if you've been watching me for a while, I always say introverts make the best major gift fundraisers. I'm sorry, extroverts. I'm going to get all sorts of emails now from extroverts, but introverts are real. There is that, like, there's that perception out there that's like, what does a major gift fundraiser look like? Right? In this case, they're very extroverted. They like to schmooze and work the room.
Charismatic.
Yeah, they're very charismatic. What do we know from looking at major gift success is actually the most successful major gift fundraisers are actually, really good at deep listening. They're really good at connecting one-on-one, both things that introverts excel at. So anyway, a bit of a side rabbit hole I went down, but I think that I've always found that a really practical piece as well, just in terms of thinking, like, even though I may not look like, the typical major gift fundraiser, what strengths am I bringing to the table? What unique strengths am I bringing to the table? Actually, like, as an introvert, that actually will really help support me in this work. So yeah, I love that. Did you have any other examples you've seen that have popped up in your travels that you wanted to share with us?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think one of the ways that I see it in other people is, when you've had an event or completed a project, quite often there's specific people who are thanked and recognized for their work. And it's that moment where you're unable to accept that compliment. When you're like, oh, it wasn't just me, it was everybody. And again, I think it goes beyond modesty. It's, in that moment, it's thinking anyone could do what I did. So it's not special and it doesn't need to be called out. And then feeling like what they did, I can't do. But what I'm doing is actually very easy and shouldn't be recognized in a certain way. And there's so many times where I've watched colleagues get thanked and they're so quick to dismiss it, right? And it's just like not being able to take that moment to celebrate and, recognize that it's a team effort, but that their tasks and their contributions also helped with that achievement.
I love that, is owning those compliments. And that's an interesting example, I think, of those external sources of imposter phenomenon, right? Is like, I think particularly, like, as women, we're socialized to diminish a compliment if we get it wrong. Oh, no, it was nothing. So, right, like, is actually, again, recognizing that, and next time you get a compliment or you get a shout out, just being like, thank you. It takes practice. We're laughing.
I know, it's the simplest way to respond, and yet it's the most difficult way to respond. I think another way for me that it has shown up, and now I recognize it the more I've learned about imposter syndrome, is, at the start of my career, and I still have the tendency now, it's wanting to get every certification, do every training, attend every join every committee, because you feel like you don't know enough, and because you're feeling inadequate, you compensate by trying to sort of do everything. But the thing is, it goes beyond being a lifelong learner and ambitious, because there's no moment where you feel like, okay, I know enough, right? And you're never going to, but it's that wanting to and that desire to sort of know every little thing. And in other ways, and this one's a catch-22, it's like, if there are new responsibilities, you want to take on those responsibilities. It makes you feel like an imposter because you might not know how to do it. But you take it on because you want to add value and you feel like you're not adding value as it is. And I think the flip side of it is sometimes you spread yourself too thin, and that contributes to feeling like an imposter even more, because now you've taken on all these things and you're trying to do everything, and it's hard to do it all well. And so you kind of catch yourself in the cycle of, trying to learn everything, manage everything, and be everything. And sometimes it's impossible. So that one's sort of one that like puts you in this loop of feeling like an imposter that's hard to break.
Yeah, you raised such a good point, because I see that also show up with students and clients. And of course, like knowing how to effectively use major gift strategies and tactics is super important. But I see people get caught in the cycle of actually not taking and using what they already know, right? And not taking action, because it's like, I just need one more piece of information. We see this in often in major, again, research is super important, but I see major gift fundraisers get caught in a never-ending research cycle, right? Because it's like that, that fear, or that wanting one more piece of information or one more tactic before you actually do the scary thing that makes you feel like an imposter. So there's another good thing I think to recognize as well, right? Is like sometimes, and this is the interesting thing about overcoming imposter syndrome for now, because as I said, in the situational moment, because I said it does crop up again and again throughout your career. But key to overcoming it is really to take action, right? Use what you know and take action, because it's only with taking action, I think, that confidence grows. So I did want to talk a little bit about how imposter phenomenon does crop up continually throughout our careers, because I think we were talking before we went live. I've been I never like saying the year, because I always feel like it dates me. I started fundraising in 1995, right? And I find that I still see the imposter phenomenon arising in my work. But what I've noticed is it changes. So like the context often changes, or what triggers it changes. So I almost see it like you've got this comfort zone you're in. And so if you go out of that comfort zone, is like, oh, there we go. There's imposter syndrome again. Oh, one more. Okay, comfortable with that. You grow the comfort zone again. So every time you get to kind of that next stage, I see it oftentimes coming up again in folks, right? So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that. Like, do you feel that you're seeing it come up in different ways or different situations than you used to, for example, when you were just starting out as a fundraiser?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's so funny because when I was thinking about the ways that I've seen it in myself, it's that I've been working in the industry for 10 years and I still consider myself new, and I
Wow.
cannot possibly like imagine considering myself in, the next stage or mid-level. Like I still, and I wonder why that is, because I'm like, 10 years is a long time to work in the same industry too, right? I went to the Humber fundraising program out of university, and I've stayed in the same sector in very, in all fundraising roles. So it's, when do you start to accept that, that no, like I actually do know more than even I let myself think that I know. I think one of the things that used to be hard, and I still find it hard, if you've ever revamped your resume or things, looking at in major gifts, like the dollars raised, I would want to put in the exact dollar that I think I raised, but it is just because your CEO may have made the final ask, or a volunteer may have made the ask. If you've done all the work along the way to make that gift happen, to do the stewardship, the cultivation, the research, it's part of your achievement, but it doesn't feel like it. And it's really hard to own that as an achievement. It's like, oh no, that's not my gift,
Right.
and in a major gift setting, those numbers are ones we're supposed to own. But it's really hard to do that. And I would still find it very difficult to know where that line is in terms of what you've worked for versus what your team did. And
yeah, that's it. That's an interesting one. And I see that sometimes show up, when we're talking about dollar amounts of gifts, because there is an overfocus on, typically an overfocus in major gifts on financial targets that then translates into the way we work oftentimes. And so where I've seen imposter phenomenon arise in folks is when, for example, they're like, well, I closed a 5-figure gift, but I don't know if I can close a 6-figure gift. I closed a 6-figure gift, but maybe I can't close a 7-figure gift, right? Like we create these barriers for ourselves. And again, don't acknowledge and look, these are all sort of themes to really acknowledge and own, right? Like the skills that you have and have shown and have used to, like, land that gift is all transferable to landing a gift with an extra 0 at the end. This is like one of my most important messages, I think, for folks, because I actually see organizations hold themselves back, right? And fundraisers hold themselves back because they're thinking like, this is so different than that. And so I think like a big important part of our work personally is, again, just that like owning our success, recognizing the skills that we actually contributed to achieve that success, and know that that is actually transferable, right, to that next bigger gift and that next level. So Joe's just weighing in saying, I see Emma nodding like crazy. Yes, yes. I think that you, Mimosa, feel like I did 15 years ago, and Joe would know because Joe, actually, when I say I started fundraising in 1995, I think I may have met Joe shortly after that. So Joe has seen me as a as a brand new baby fundraiser in the 90s. So she's got, so nice to see you. Thanks for joining us, Joe. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I love this conversation. I could go on all afternoon about it. So let's actually take, I want to ask you another question just to sort of about the practical piece. And folks, if you have questions, let us know, because we love this as interactive and we love to hear from you, and opinions too. We want you to weigh in. So go ahead and drop those below. Okay, so I want to ask you about, like a practical idea or resource. If there was just one thing that folks could take away from this conversation, what would you want that to be?
Yes, so I watched this YouTube video from the School of Life about imposter syndrome, and there's this quote that I loved from it. It's from a French philosopher, a 16th century French philosopher named Michel de Montaigne, and he said, I'm going to paraphrase just in case there are children in the room watching with their parent or anything, but it's basically that kings and philosophers use the toilet and so do ladies, is how I'll choose to say it. I think, it's a humorous take on the idea that we know ourselves from the inside, right? Mm-hmm. So we follow ourselves along the day, and so it's easy to humanize ourselves. When we look at others, we're only seeing a curated version of them, and especially professionally, right? You're interacting with them in a very specific setting. So it's easy to forget that we're all human, right? And it's easy to forget that we all go to the bathroom. It's a bodily function that happens to everybody, queens, kings, and you. So, it's that humanizing piece that I think can foster a sense of belonging. I do think, when you look at what organizations can do to support employees who might be feeling, imposter syndrome, I think one of the things they could do is work on creating that inclusive environment, and a place where people feel like they belong and are recognized. And I think, you know, that sense of belonging, that's what I loved about the quote, because it was like, oh yes, no matter who you are, no matter what stage of life you're in, no matter how much you've achieved, we all have similarities. And it's kind of, for me, it reminds me that like we all add value in different ways.
I love that. So I thought of you when I wanted to talk about this topic, because I feel like I feel like I've seen you speak about it so eloquently and share so many things. So I'm wondering, in your travels, have you come across any, particular like resource recommendations or articles? Like, where can people go if they want to take a deeper dive into the topic?
Yes, absolutely. So one resource I would say, it's actually like a podcast episode. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. I listen to it sometimes. He has really cool guests. I have the episode number written down. Sorry, I can't remember it. I think it's 127.
27, and we'll drop it in the comments afterwards, so folks can look that up too.
Yeah, and it's about overcoming imposter syndrome, and it is a great conversation to listen in on. There are a few books. The books are more geared towards women. Imposter syndrome started out as something that they were studying specifically in women who felt like they weren't, ever going to achieve what their male peers in academia were, and that they didn't belong there. So there's one book called The Confidence Code, which is about confidence in women, and another that's it's The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. And that book is specifically about imposter syndrome. I have read it. She identifies 5 different ways that imposter syndrome might show up. And, you might relate to a different version of it. So that's a great book. And TED Talks actually has a whole playlist of talks that relate to imposter syndrome. I think there might be 4 to 6 of them, but those are really great. And one of them is actually focusing in on sort of the experience of race, being a female, and experiencing imposter syndrome and why that might happen. So I will happily share those links if anyone's interested.
I would love that. We'll actually add them to this post so people can find those as resources easily. So this is great, Mimosa. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And I actually really enjoy this because I think, not only is this a really important topic for us to throw some light on, but I actually really enjoy, as Joe emphasized, communicating across the years about imposter syndrome and how this will show up, whether you're a very significant decade into your career, whether you're 25 years into your career, whether you're just starting out. We all experience some form of, the imposter phenomenon showing up, and recognizing it is a really important first step. But there are also all sorts of great ways and resources that you can tap into if you see this as something, that's showing up. And, I think my last word I want to leave with folks is like, there are external influences and internal influences, but like this is so normal for folks to experience. And I think knowing that you're not alone in it is also really helpful as well.
Yeah.
And Joe had one last question around, have we come across anything that touches on introverted personal styles in leadership / imposter syndrome? So I'll look that up too. I don't know if you have any ideas, Mimosa, that are specifically related to being an introvert in imposter syndrome.
I think there was an 𝗕𝗙FP session on it at some point, because I think it came up on one of my Google searches, but I'm not sure if there's a recording of it or anything. I can't think of anything specific at the top of my head, but if I look through my list, there might be something that relates.
Excellent. Okay, Joe, so if we come across anything, we'll add that to our list of resources. Thank you so much, Mimosa. And thank you for all of the folks that showed up to watch us live and are catching up on the replay. We love to have you here, and it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. So yes, until next time, my friends, thank you, Mimosa. Now, if folks want to stay in touch and get social with you, where's the best place to find you?
Yes, LinkedIn, just by Mimosa Kabir, on Twitter the same way, and I think my email's attached to some of those as well. So very easy to find.
Awesome. Well, let's all stay in touch. And thank you again so much, Mimosa, for joining us today to talk all about the imposter phenomenon and major gifts. So look forward to seeing folks again next time we're live. And Mimosa, we'll have to have you on for part 2 of this conversation, because I could have gone on for an extra half an hour for sure. So we'll look forward to that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye.